All right, so thanks everyone for coming. This is a much larger group than our 2 o'clock. So we're more than double the size.
No pressure though.
So for those that may not know me, my name is Richard Penny. Have lived in town my entire life, within like a 1 mile triangle, still there. Have been involved in the town since, got involved probably around 2007, when I started to get involved. Due to my wife, my answer was, let's move to Norwell at Duxbury, and she goes, why not move and get off your ass and go make a difference in town? I'm like, okay. So I've had the pleasure of serving with Bill on the Finance Committee. I had the pleasure of serving with Karen on the Charter. I have been on both school building committees. The last school building committee I was chair. Been a member of the Board of Selectmen. Coached a bunch of youth sports. Ran the basketball league for 12 years. So I've been pretty involved. So this is something that back in about 2018, after being involved in the town and starting to understand, really started to understand the challenges that we face as a town, as an organization, in trying to get things done. So was able to talk to members of the Board of Selectmen. Then I actually became a member, and we funded a study. That's how we ended up hiring the Collins Center, who, as I mentioned, is the preeminent in Massachusetts of doing charters. As of over a year ago, they've done 125. I don't know what they're up to now. We started with them just before COVID, and worked about 5 months on this, and then COVID put an interruption. We did get a couple of minor things passed in the first 5 months. Then we worked, Karen, what, a year and a half?
18 months there.
Yeah, so we worked about 18 months where the committee met with the Collins Center on a monthly basis. We kind of went through what we were looking to try to accomplish. They helped us out tremendously with their resources, their knowledge. One of the things that we did was they looked at 10 other towns that were similar to Rockland. Some being in the South Shore, like Pembroke and Hanover. Some out west, like Ashburnham and all, everything in between. Hudson, Mass. There was another one. But they were trying to find similar communities, right? That, from an economic standpoint, population standpoint, how the government worked. Use those examples of what they do, how they run their towns, plus the experience of Collins Center, plus the input from the committee. And we went through literally everything within the chart. And some of the goals that we wanted to achieve was the ability to create an organization chart, which we do not have the ability to. We wanted to get some clarification. We wanted to be able, people to answer the question, or when the question is asked, who's in charge, right? Just a simple thing, because we don't have that answer to it, other than the residents that happen to come out to vote. They ultimately are in charge, but they have no say because we don't even have a recall process. So if we elect someone that is not doing the job, we have no viable way of moving it. So ultimately, we have no one in charge. So we went through this whole process, and we did this literally as a committee. As much as people may not want to believe it, Board of Selectmen were not invited. Finance Committee was not invited. Town Council was not invited. Town Administrator, so the Town Administrator came twice last year and once this year, I think. Might have been once last year. So the Town Administrator may have been, in the course of what ended up being about 36 meetings, the Town Administrator, I think, was invited either 2 or 3 times, and Town Council was invited twice.
No, going to clarify what his duties are.
Correct. Yep. So this was done literally in the group that had been appointed. So as we went through, there were a few things that we wanted to try to accomplish, and that was last year, we came to town meeting, and it did not pass. And some of the sticking points last year for some of the townspeople were the elected versus appointed positions. As much as personally, I think we're better off appointed. We heard what the residents said, and then we went back and looked at this again, because at the end of the day, and Steve's, well, just so everybody, if you don't know, our new member to the Board of Selectmen. So congratulations. But Steve will soon find out, as I did when I get elected, that you may have certain perceptions on how the town is run, and then when you sit there, it's a whole different reality. And it's an interesting thing. So as we went through here on the second round, we tried to identify those key items that would make an impact in the ability of the town to run more efficiently, but also listening to what the residents said last year, right? So some of the key things that we looked at, right? So first and foremost, updating the recall process. Because I learned firsthand, so when we had the scandal in 2018 with our members of the Board of Selectmen and the Town Administrator, I was kind of leading that charge, learned firsthand that well, technically we could recall someone. It is not viable, because you're not going to have, crap, well, we got one. My wife is.
Paper.
Huh?
Oh, yeah, paper.
Yeah, but a notary. So you would have to have someone signing that with the notary right there for 500 people. So the change in this would allow the collection of signatures, the 500, no different than you pull papers for an office today. Those signatures would go to the town clerk's office. The town clerk would then go through each one of those signatures, confirm that individual, the address, they're registered voters, look at the signature, well, they would do that as one confirmed affidavit, right? So it becomes a process, which is what virtually every other town that has a recall process does. So that was one of the first things that we wanted to make sure, right? Because we have had some challenges. I know that there were 2 residents that within the last year wanted to start a recall on one of the boards. And after talking with legal counsel, talking with the clerk, and realizing what would happen, it's just not right. So that was the first thing we looked at. The other thing is consistency. So as we looked at this, it was very, very inconsistent. So we talked about boards, and Steve, we'll talk specifically about boards, right? The other thing that we looked at when we did this was we took this from a very granular level, right? It was not this specific board. It was not this specific employee. It was, this is the governing document of the town for today, for the next decade, and at least the foundation for the decade after that, and the foundation for the decade after that. So we took all the players out and looked at the position. So if you look today, we have some boards that have the ability to hire and fire. We have some boards that the charter is not clear, that exactly who has the ability. And we have some boards where they've taken that on. And then we have boards that do not do any hiring and firing. Here's what we know. If you are elected or appointed to a board or a position, because you are elected, you do not have to go through the town's personnel policy. Meaning that if you, and I hate like, I don't want to call it a specific board, but if Board X, those 3 members, had to, and in the charter it said they are responsible for the hiring of that position. Those 3 members of the board can choose to hire whoever they wanted. They would not have to go through a process where HR is trying to find candidates, that there is specific job qualifications. Now, what we have tried to do, working through HR, the town administrator, and the various boards and departments, is encourage those boards to please use HR to help both recruiting, vetting, making sure that the employees meet some minimum qualifications. Now, that's all the HR does. The hiring manager, whether you are appointed, elected, or whatever it is, they're going to hire and make the final determination on who that employee is. But at least we're ensured that that candidate, if they go through the HR process, meets the minimum qualifications. Right? So today, we don't have that. So that's one of the reasons why we want to get to consistency on the board. The other thing, so being a member of, I don't know what it is, 5 boards now? So one thing has been consistent for me in every board that I've been on. My qualifications are the same. I'm over 18, I'm a registered voter, and I live in town. So we have an elected official in here. What's your qualifications for the Board of Selectmen?
Like you just said, if we're 18, registered voter, live in town.
There you go, right? So when we leave this up to elected, and nothing against, we have a lot of good elected and appointed officials, we really do. But when you leave that up to that board, we don't know, has anyone on that board actually had any experience hiring? Do they know how to go find a qualified candidate? Do they know the questions to ask? Do they know the questions not to ask? Right? And at the end of the day, in every board that I've ever been on, I've never got paid a dime. It is a volunteer position. So whether you're appointed or elected, you're still volunteering. If you're volunteering to be a member of the Board of Selectmen, you do have to go one step further and you have to get more votes than someone else, but you're still volunteering. And it is a very, very part-time position. Right? So as a member of the Board of Selectmen, as a member of the FinCom, those are 2 committees that tend to meet more often. But there are other committees out there that might meet every 2 months. They might meet every month for 20 minutes. And to put them in charge of personnel and understanding what's going on in the day-to-day puts us in a bad spot. I can tell you that every department head that we have that is under an elected or appointed official, we do not have personnel files for those employees. They don't get reviewed, they don't have goal setting, because there's not a requirement. So one of the things that we wanted to do through this in the language is that, and the language ties in that the town administrator has final approval on all hirings. Further down in the charter, it stipulates unless those positions have been delegated to someone else. And we delegate any of those positions under department heads, those would be the ones who hire, right? But we did that to ensure that every employee has to go through the vetting process. Every person, every employee would have a job description, every employee would have to go through a yearly review process. And if there were job performance issues, there would be a process in place to kind of coach them through, all the way through if we, unfortunately, we had to go and terminate. So one of the things that we're famous for in this town is lawsuits. So it's a pretty big gig being town council for Rockland. There have been multitude of wrongful termination cases where we have lost. And in each and every case, we don't have a personnel fund. In the state of Massachusetts, unless you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, you're gonna lose every time, even if you got a crappy employee. So that's one of the things that we want to do in here. We wouldn't do anything else in the boards. So Park, for example. So Parkland's under, they come under state statutes. So Park would still be responsible virtually for everything that they do today, except for the department head, right? Now, each board would be part of the hiring process. So if we had a 3-board member of whatever department it is, and we had to hire that person, that board is part of that hiring process. They're not excluded, but they're not the only decision maker, right? Because the other thing is, all of our terms, for the most part, are 3 years. So you might be a member for 3 years. You don't get elected the next time, you decide not to run, there's a new member. But that department head is still there. So oftentimes, that department head, in the course of their 15-year career as a department head, has had 15 different bosses, right? At various times, that might know him, might not know him. Here's the other thing, as a member of the board, there's no requirement you ever even go meet the department head. It's conceivable that the board member doesn't even know who the department head is at that point, right? So that's why we wanted to put this in, and that's the only change on the boards. And it would be consistent unless by state law or statute. So I'll give you the library trustees. Through state law, the library trustees would be responsible for hiring the librarian. So on the state statute, state requires that the board of trustees is the hiring agent for the library. So that would supersede the charter. But unless it's spelled out by the state, the process would be, boards are included, but the hiring process goes through HR. The department head would be doing the hiring. If it was a department head that needed to be hired, the town administrator would lead that, working with the board in HR to vet the candidates, do the interview process, and then ultimately provide an offer.
So HR, you don't have that now, right?
So we do. So we have
Is
this.
this a person or a group or?
It's a person and a half. So we have full-time, and I believe it's part-time. I don't think it's been made, I don't think the second person's full-time.
No,
It's fairly new, like 2 years.
I think it's 19 hours, I believe.
Yeah. This is something that is 5 years with someone in HR,
Probably.
somewhere in that ballpark. We didn't have that.
The school department has no personal person, right?
They don't.
I thought they did.
The school does not have a personnel person.
I thought they did.
They do not.
You did it?
In title they do. Jean Hackett, part of her title is personnel.
So she oversees finance personnel, but they do not have, so what has happened now is the school, so in the superintendent's office, they have a payroll administrator, they've got some personnel in there. They will, if something comes up, they will work with our HR in town hall. And HR in town hall helps now with the benefit package and some other things. But yeah, we do not have anyone, quote unquote, a HR director or person in the school system. And just so you guys, I should have said this before, this charter does not include the school or the Rockland Abington water joint, water lines. So the school falls under DESI, so no school falls under a town charter. They're overseen by DESI, right, Bill? And the Rockland Abington Joint Waterworks, if any changes would ever be done with the charter, that would require Rockland and Abington working together in making any of those changes. So for this exercise, we excluded the school and the water. But other than the school and the water, it includes everything else. The only note in here is that the school and the water have to fall on the same timeline as every other department to present their yearly budget. So that's the only call out, is that they have to follow that timeline. But other than that, they run autonomously from the town charter. All right. So the other thing we did, slight review, well, we did the review, but also a slight update on the duties and responsibilities of the board of selectmen. So I kind of go back to the question, who's in charge in town? And I often ask that question, and people are like, either the board of selectmen or the town administrator. Answer is not even close. So maybe 20%, actually probably not even 20%, if you look from a budget standpoint. Do the board of selectmen and the town administrator have any say or influence? So what happens now is the board of selectmen and the town administrator try to create relationships where they can have influence, at least, or provide opinions with the various departments. It makes it very, very difficult if you have departments that want to run 100% autonomously. So what we've done on this, and this kind of goes back to, and this was a change. So in last year's town charter, we really had this as kind of went to the town administrator, and now it's going to the board select. So as we look at this, one of the key things is the ability to reorganize, consolidate, or establish positions or departments. All right? So the reason why we went from last year's recommendation for the town administrator to this year's recommendation of the board of selectmen was because of people at town meeting, right? They want to feel that their vote means something. They're not voting in the town administrator, but they are voting in the members of the board of selectmen. So the board of selectmen in this charter truly becomes more of their voice than ever before, because the board of selectmen and the town administrator start to have more say over what's going on, right? Because the department heads would report up to them, right? So in the reorganization, so one of the things that has driven me crazy for 15 years, and why, as people go, why do we keep getting hit? It's like, hey, there's a school, hey, there's a senior center, hey, there's a road project, hey, there's a fire station, hey, there's a rec center that wants to do it, hey, there's this, that, and the other thing. It's because we operate today, and each department is a separate silo that is responsible for themselves. There is no clear picture or long-term plan of what do we do. So they did create the capital planning committee, but unfortunately, we know how the capital planning committee works. And nothing against them, but when a project comes in, so I'll be the first one. right? So being on the school committee both times. This elementary school project, um, we found out that there weren't gonna be a lot of towns applying for that year. We had been talking about it, but we weren't quite ready yet to go forward. But talking with our representative from the Senate and the House, they're like, and there's not a lot of applications. Like, if you want to do it, this would be the year to do it. So we ended up accelerating it and coming in sooner than what we had originally thought. Because of two things. One, the timing was good, meaning we were at a time of deflationary costs. Not a lot of towns were in there. Because of that, we ended up getting a higher reimbursement rate. That school project, by the way, came in, is about $11.5 million in the budget, when it's all said and done. It's not anything because me as the chair or whatever did a great job. The timing was right. That's what all it was. And we had everything going. But that kind of goes, because originally there was thought about doing a fire station, but because of what happened in all this funding, the school jumped. Then the fire station comes in, doesn't get passed. Then they hold off. Then the South Shore Tech comes in, out of nowhere. Gets voted. Now the fire station gets passed. So what I'm getting at is, as we do this and try to have a structure in place, we would be able to, and as part of this, we would have the ability to create departments, right? And one of which is a building's, potentially, or positions, a facilities manager. So one of our biggest issues is we don't have it. So our council of aging, Julie, she's responsible for the building. Our librarian is responsible for the library. Chief Duffy, God bless him, he's responsible for maintaining that fire station and putting these projects together. It's not what their core competencies are, it's not what their skill sets are. So in this charter, what it would do is allow the Board of Selectmen, if they were looking at it and said, hey, this is a position that we have a need for. We'd have to come up with a way, how do we fund it, what it is, but they would have the ability to create that position, which then, now the town buildings fall under someone who can then put long-term plans in place, right? So Bill knows firsthand, a department budget will put money in there for maintenance on the building. But so often, that money, because it's approved as a bottom line budget, so often that money ends up getting used for something else. And the building maintenance gets deferred. And because of the way that it was structured, there's nothing in place to prevent that. Because that department head is ultimately in charge. And nothing against them, but if you're you're the police chief, and man, they need, more gear or whatever, and they got $100,000 set aside for the building maintenance, and something came in that's like $78,000 for, some equipment that they need. What do? Do I put the $100,000 in the building, or do I get my guys? I'm gonna get my guys. But nothing against it, it's just how it's set up. If we had it with the building, we could then put a long-term plan in place. As we build these buildings, how do we maintain them? So after we pay for them for 30 years, they're not falling down, and then we have to go and do it. Right? I use an example. So the senior center, Peg, who was our former council of aging, who ran the senior center. Peg was awesome. But she shouldn't have needed to run a building. So after think it was 14 months, we had all the automatic flushes in the senior center, right? So they all started to fail. So Peg, being in charge of the building, called a plumber. So one of the things that we don't do, because each department is responsible for themselves, they call whoever they want. So called the plumber came in and said, all your flushes need to be replaced.
Is it rebuilding?
Hmm?
Rebuilding?
14, 15 months after it opened. We spent about $5,000 on new flushes for what should have been less than $100 of batteries. It's not Peg's fault. She didn't know. She called the plumber came in, plumber saw her, hey, I can make a big buck here, and screwed us. So those are the things that happen today. So again, not saying that if we do this charter, that the Board of Selectmen says, hey, we're gonna do this, but it gives them the ability to do that, right? And that's all this charter is trying to give the tools so we can run a more efficient operation. You know, we're never gonna be run as a business, but it needs to be run more like a business, right? So the other thing, we went through in depth, review and update of the duties and responsibilities of the town administrator. So this clarifies, the town administrator is responsible to the select. So take it as a corporation, right? The CEO runs the organization. In large organizations, the CEO reports to the board, right? So there's a chairman of the board. So the Board of Selectmen is the board. The chair of the Board of Selectmen is the chair of that board, who then they delegate to the CEO, who then runs the organization. And that's what we're looking to do, set that up. Now, there are some towns, Hanover, for example. So Hanover has a strong town administrator. Hanover, actually, strong town manager. So the town manager in Hanover literally can do whatever they want to do. They don't answer to anybody. Now, ultimately, if the town administrator does not do their job, then it's up to the Board of Selectmen to do something about it. But it's awful hard when they've got a signed contract. We intentionally here flip that. It's the Board of Selectmen. They ultimately have to say, the town administrator cannot do anything without the Board of Selectmen's approval, with the exception, if the town administrator tries to do something, presents it to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen have 20 days to vote on that. So if the town administrator wants to do something, and the board ends up saying no, then it doesn't happen. If the board votes yes, then it goes forward. If the board doesn't act within 20 days, then the town administrator would be able to go forward with what they want to do. Then we have a problem with the Board of Selectmen, right? Not doing what they're supposed to do. But we wanted to make sure we had those checks and balances, and ultimately, it is the individuals that the townspeople vote to represent them that ultimately have the authority to govern and run this town. So we did that. The town administrator is responsible for the day operation. Clearly, we make that clear. But in the charter, it designates through that the duties move from the town administrator to the department head to the employees under the department head. No different than virtually any company that's out there, right? Here's key. So years ago, our procurement officer was our accountant. When the accountant was on a Saturday removed, we did not have a procurement officer in town. We didn't have it. So that was a challenge. It is not called out who is our procurement officer. So in this new charter, it makes it clear the town administrator would be our chief procurement officer. Now, since then, we have some additional employees who have gone and they've got certified to do procurement, so we have a few employees now that can do that. But ultimately, it would be under the town administrator, the chief procurement officer. So that anything that went in town would go through the correct procurement process. Anything over $10,000, I'm not gonna pretend that I know all of it, but we have it. Today, we don't have that. We don't have a chief procurement officer. Doug is our procurement officer. He's got he went and got his certifications. We've got a couple others, but there's nothing that calls out that he is. He just took it because we didn't have anyone else, and we needed to have someone. And then the other part that I think is really key with this is that the town administrator would be responsible for the town buildings. So that doesn't mean that the town administrator long-term, ultimately, the town administrator and the board of selectmen would be responsible for all of our buildings. But that doesn't mean that we don't create a position with a professional coming in to do that. But for the time being, we would have one person that would oversee the buildings. So at that point, we can start to go and start to do some long-term planning on how do we manage our assets. Because today we don't. And what happens is the buildings deteriorate, we as taxpayers keep getting asked for more. Right? And we have to stop that. We just have to stop that chain, right? Like, how do we do this? How do we ensure that when we build a building, that it's being maintained properly, so in 30 years, we're not, hey, we have to replace it. It's in 50 years, in 70 years, it's still useful. So we'd be able to do that. The other thing that this town charter would do is ensure that the town's personnel policies are followed and adhered to. And that kind of went back to what I was saying before. Whenever there is an elected or appointed official doing hiring, they're not legally required to follow the town's policies. They're encouraged to. We try to ask them to do that, but ultimately they don't have to. We want to make sure that all employees are working under the personnel policies in place. For FinCom, this would create a more realistic timeline for the budgets. So currently, right now, it's required for the departments to get their preliminary budget in before December 31st. It's before we have any estimates. Bill knows firsthand what we get in December and what is in mid-March. It's not even the same document. It's distinctly different. So this would push it out that we would have 90 days. So when the budgets are coming in, they would be based on more realistic estimates of what our new revenue is for the town, what our state monies are going to be, what the needs are in the departments. So we looked at that. This was another one that was kind of funny. So I mentioned the capital planning committee earlier. So the capital planning committee was created. Technically, it was created illegally. So there's nothing in the charter on where those appointments come from. What has happened is that there have been agreements between the various departments on where they come from. So this, we wouldn't change. So school committee still gets two, board of selectmen still get two, FinCom gets one. That wouldn't change, but at least we're calling it out, saying, hey, there is a capital planning committee, and this is where the appointments come from. And then I think another key piece of this. So as we look at this, our old charter 55 years ago, if you look at it, there's a lot of detailing, and that's kind of how charters were back then. Now the recommendation is that the charter becomes that 30,000-foot view, and then the bylaws underneath that charter. So charter takes a long time. Like I said, if this does pass, it's going to be 10 to 14 months before this gets approved and that we're going to be able to implement the bylaw gets past the town meeting, it's in effect instantly. So, what we don't want to do is wait another 55 years to review our charter. So we put in here that every 10 years, it's mandated, there is a charter review. So every 10 years, the Board of Selectmen would need to create a committee of 12 to 18 months that would review the charter. And then if there were any recommended changes, they would make those recommended changes. The other thing that this does is mandates the Board of Selectmen to, every 5 years, to create a bylaw subcommittee that review our bylaws every 5 years. So what this does, hopefully, is as the world changes, as the town changes, as the needs change, that we can start to be more, instead of being, we can be more proactive versus more reactive, right? Not wait 55 years and it's like, hey, yeah, we should probably do this. It's every 5 years, let's review those bylaws. Every 10 years, let's review the chart. And we do it off center, meaning, so if the charter were to pass, and let's say it get implemented next year at this time, we'll just use this as a time, or let's say next July 1st, it goes to the fall. 10 years from now, we would do a charter review. But we would do a bylaw 2 years from now, and then 7 years from now. So we are not going more than 3 years at any point in time without reviewing our bylaws or our charter, which should allow for, necessary changes as, as things change. God knows, 1970 today, it's significantly different today than what it was in the 70s. Yeah, you can actually walk uptown without, drugs out there and motorcycles, stabbings and whatever. So, kind of going back, things that were on last year. So we had made a recommendation last year to change our quorum from 150 to 100. We as a committee stepped back on that. And as we started thinking about it, we continue to struggle with getting citizens to engage. So if we go to 100, that just means it's less important for you to go. Right? So we kind of decided, let's keep it at the 150. And if we can't get 115 towns to, it's 150 is not a big number, right?
How many votes are there?
Just over 13,000. And then we listened to the people last year. We took all of the proposed elected to appointed positions, and we took that. We're going to leave those as elected positions. I'm not going to touch them. So, that doesn't mean that the next charter review can be reviewed, absolutely, right? But for right now, because at the end of the day, if this doesn't pass, I'm not the type that's like, oh my God, the world's falling in. If this doesn't pass, we'll continue operating like we have for 55 years. But it will continue to be inefficient. As residents will continue to get frustrated. Who do I go to? Who do I talk to? How do I get shit done? Right? Why am I pissing money away? Why do they have another building? Why are they doing this? And it's because of the way that we're set up. It's not because we have individuals in town that do not want to do the right thing. I will tell you, being as involved as I am, we have some amazing people in town that work for this town. Absolutely. It was interesting last year when we proposed to move the elected positions to appointed. Those 3 individuals that were elected were all on board. Dave Taylor was the first one. He's like, it would make my job so much easier if I was appointed versus elected, because he'd be able to do more things, it actually handicaps them at times, on the way it is. So I thought that was interesting, is that the employees themselves that are in that wanted it to pass, but we had a group of concerned citizens that, thought it was in the best interest to leave it as it is, because don't take my vote away. Which, by the way, you haven't had a choice in those departments for years, but that's beside me. You know, so, that's kind of it. I know I rambled for a while.
I just wanted to find out one thing because it was brought up recently. We talked about it and we voted on it. For some reason it didn't get changed in this draft. But under the town clerk, hiring their assistant, it says subject to the approval of the town administrator. That should have been struck.
And it will be, so on the floor, so we already talked today, so this was just going through it, it just wasn't removed. So under the town clerk, it says shall appoint an assistant town clerk, subject to approval by the town administrator. Subject to approval by the town administrator, we will, on the floor of the town meeting, remove that.
That way it's just
But because it's
consistent with
already-
the town treasurer and the town clerk.
Yeah, so that way everything's consistent. So because it's already gone, it was already voted on and gone to print, we can't change it beforehand, so we'll just do it on the print.
Good call.
Any questions?
Maybe unrelated, but none of the board of selectmen, something for all the meeting ones. Other boards also?
Oh, yeah, every board.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So every board has to follow the same guidelines. They have to post 48 hours before the meeting. Every board, it's an open meeting, so we met for, over the course of 2 different sessions, I don't know, 30 times. We had,
2 visitors, one was Lori Child and one was Jackie.
yep,
And all of it in 3 years.
so finance committee, in all my years on the finance committee, I don't think I ever had a visitor, but they're,
We had someone a couple of years ago, one meeting, but I think he was lost. Some guy who was there.
Don't be so hard on yourself.
Might have been-
would you say that might be you?
It might have been me a couple of years ago. I was in a different meeting and I wrapped up and I was like, oh, what's going on in the lower hall?
So every board is under the same open meeting laws. They need to post, they are open meetings. Wherever they're open, wherever they're meeting, needs to be open, doors can't be closed. And it has to have access. People can come in at any meeting that they need.
So like the selectmen, when they go into executive session, is that?
That's different. So
No, it's not open.
yeah, so there are multiple boards that can go into an executive session. Technically, any board can, if there was something that they had a conversation that they felt that put the town in a bad spot for negotiating, or
Personnel.
that there was gonna be, something legal that could come up and cause it. So that's the only reason why you're going into executive session. So Board of Selectmen and zoning tend to be the two that probably go into executive session the most. Just because there are times when they gotta have some discussions that if it was out in the public could cause some issues. You know, but you have to meet the guidelines on what it is, and you have to have minutes for what that meeting was, so people know what's going on.
So can board members talk to each other about meetings at all, any town stuff, or?
So if you're one-on-one, you can. Well, I shouldn't say this, you can never be in a quorum. So if you were in a board of 3, you can never have a one-on-one conversation with a board member. You're actually in violation. If you're on a board of 5, you can have a one-on-one conversation with another member. If you're a board of 7, you can have a conversation up to 3. If you're on a board of 15, it's a little, it actually ends up how many members are on there, but as long as you don't meet a quorum, you can have conversations. But generally, most boards are either 3 or 5. So it really limits your ability to have conversations. So again, it kind of tries to set it up that when business is being done, it's not a side deal that's already been, as much as people always want to say, oh, that was a side deal, I'm like, "Nah, it wasn't." You know, it's like, you know, go ahead.
Rich, couple of questions or comments. First, elections should be held on the second Saturday of April. I know that's tradition. Seems somewhat rigid. I know in 2020, the state gave us disposition to hold them in June. Do we want to give ourselves any flexibility in case there is a local disaster and the state doesn't step in?
So we were, so both on town meeting and that, the recommendation was to pick a date by the Collins Center. So the Board of Selectmen, through state statute, if there was something that came up that prevented it, so let's say, not that it happens, but let's say there was a hurricane coming in, it was predicted for Saturday, the Board of Selectmen up to 72 hours beforehand could take a vote and say, hey, because of this pending whatever, we can move it. But the recommendation by the Collins Center was to put a date. I guess the state doesn't like
Too much flexibility.
too much flexibility.
Because it can be manipulated.
Yeah.
All right. Second issue is, annual town meeting, quorum of 150, usually not a problem. Special town meeting, last November, you may recall, we got a quorum of 150 only because there were a bunch of basketball games being played, and they took the coaches of the games that are about to be played, had them register, then they went back and coached, and the coaches that had just come off the court registered to get us up to 150. Now, the reason we have special meetings in November or whenever is because there's urgent business that needs to be done before the next annual town meeting. If we hadn't had basketball games out here, we wouldn't have had a quorum in November. What do you do then?
So, say shame on you for living in town and not giving a shit. I mean, not to be,
Right,
you know
but
what?
for the 142 people who are there and the stuff that needs to get passed.
So this
what
kind
do you do?
of, this kind of went back and forth of what do we do, right? So, do we go to 100? I went, listen, at that point, just go to 1. Right? Like, there are towns out there that put their quorum at 1. Right? So, what's the right answer? I don't know. We had to keep, you can't have 10 town meeting at one number and a special town meeting at another.
Okay,
Has to be the same. And we went back and forth. What is the right thing to do? I don't know. I just know, man, we were at 300 because we were getting 260 people. Like, hey, let's drop it to 150. Now we're getting 130 people. So if we drop it to 100, does that mean 70 people show up? For people who volunteer, I think it's hard, like, listen, I got a lot of friends in town. Well, I shouldn't say that. My wife has a lot of friends in town. I just happen to know them all because of my wife, right? These are people who've been in town their whole life. I've known, I've grown up with. They won't come to town meeting. I'm like, you guys piss and moan about all these things. You piss and moan about this. You never attend. This is why things don't change. Things can't change if no one is going to do anything. And that's all this is I'm looking at this going, man, I've lived here my whole life. This is dysfunctional. It is totally dysfunctional. Now, if this doesn't pass, does this change my life? No, it doesn't. My life's still going to be the same, right? But I look at the town that I grew up with and chose to stay here, and just made another choice. I'm going to be buried in my backyard. So Karen and Fraser are buying a house and we're going in the in-law. So I'm not leaving. She won't let me leave the damn town. So I've chosen that I'm staying here. Whether this passes or not, my life goes on. But I want to see a better town. And I've worked for almost 20 years to try to do that. I know Bill has, Karen has, Steve has. I mean, the CPA and the things that are going on here. Like, that's what makes a difference in the town. So that's why you see the same people that keep banging their head off the wall continually, going, man, we want to make a change. Because if we can do some of these things, it makes it a better community for all of us. It really does, right? You know, and at the end of the day, you know, someone made a comment at the early meeting, well, hey, this could save us money. This ain't gonna save us a dime. Your taxes are gonna go up 2.5% every year. We're not gonna change that, right? But what this does, hopefully, and I shouldn't say it doesn't save you money. I hope at the end of the day it does long term, in that we can start to run this as a business and we look at things and be more strategic in how we do things, how we allocate our funds, how we take care of our infrastructure, so we don't keep getting hit with these huge bills. So as they start planning, you look at, right? So one of the key things, we start having debt come off the books in 2032, and we have another chunk coming off in 2034. Another chunk coming off in 2036. This gives us the ability to start going, okay, what are those long-term things that might not be an $80 million project, but it might be, hey, this is what we've got. Hey, we can do this in 8 years because this is coming off. Ultimately, instead of people's taxes going down a little bit, we keep them at the same level, but we build into that infrastructure. So we don't get hit with these, you know, 300 for this one, 400 for this one, you know, and all of a sudden,
all
you
at
know,
the same time.
we got, you know, tax bills. You know, I look at what my property taxes are in town. I'm like, you know, it's a lot, right? So, you know, that's all this kind of is it gives us hopefully the ability to, it gives those that are asking to be in office and those that are in the lead positions the ability to manage the business better. That's what this does. And it also holds accountable. We can't fire anyone in town. We don't have any friggin' personnel fines. We literally can't fire without blowing ourselves up to a lawsuit. You know? Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming.
One or two people.
It is more.
But it's unfortunately, it's kind of reflective of town meeting, you know, thing that,
So there will be a group at town meeting that will be against this for no other reason than they don't want change. They want this to be 1970. They don't want development, and they go under the auspice of concerned citizens. And the only citizens they're concerned about are their own individual. They all have their own reason why they're on there for a specific thing that they're against. And they've held some stuff.
Are you in that group?
Am I?
Yeah,
Am I in that group?
in the concerned citizens? So then you don't know what goes on in there. I am, and I,
So I know, I can tell you,
you're
I've had,
just as concerned about the town's affairs as anyone in this role in the town.
so to get on that, I have not been allowed to join. So I think I'm a concerned citizen who has volunteered thousands of hours that through different things that I've been involved in that have related to new schools, new senior center, roads project, what is now 16 additional acres to parks, new fields, new revenue sources for the town, so that it all doesn't come out from signage to motel taxes to restaurant taxes. Those are things that I all did, right? Not just me alone, but with a group. Have worked on different structures that go back to the finance committee, that when I joined town, we didn't have free cash. We came off 8 straight years of level funding the school system. So I don't have to join, and by the way, that group of concerned citizens, who I know most of, at least on the organization, and I can tell you firsthand, they didn't become concerned citizens until there was a project that was being proposed in their backyard, that group of concerned citizens who know me came to me and said, you are taking money from the developer, and that I would personally be responsible for the death of 18,000 residents. So that's my firsthand knowledge of the concerned citizens. I also know that that group, without knowledge, education, and just because of spite, made a vote several years ago that put 250 residents in jeopardy of flood insurance just because they were pissed off. That's a group that last year was handing out a blue flyer at town meeting with inaccurate information on the blue flyer about the town charter,
That's really too late.
that did not want to come to the meeting and learn.
Well,
So I can go on and
it's
on.
disingenuous of you to malign a group of voters for any reason.
So I just called out more than a dozen specific things on that group. So please call out to me what that group has done as an entity for the town, for the citizens. So we do not have a supermarket off of Hingham Street.
It doesn't have anything to do with it.
Oh, yes, it does, because that group would not allow the change in the zoning. That deal was done, that market basket was going to go in. That market basket ended up in Hanover. That was 100% on that group, just so you know.
That is not correct.
Oh, yes, it is.
Sir, at that town meeting where that project was voted down, it was fair and square. There were citizens at the meeting, there were pros and cons, there were more one side than the other, and it was fair and square.
Yeah, I didn't say it, I never said it wasn't fair and square.
Fair and square.
They have more citizens that are going there in that organized group. What I'm saying
Same
is,
as how the school got passed, there's more, organized group of school proponents and so on. It's just majority rules, and town government.
I agree 100%. My point is, you go under the auspice of concerned citizens for Rockland, yet pick and choose which citizens can join.
It's a Facebook group.
What's that?
It's a Facebook group. It's a private Facebook group.
So it is a private Facebook group that they pick and choose who joins it. It's not just a Facebook group, it is a group that actually meets.
Haven't met for a long time.
You may not be involved in the meetings, but they have meetings
How do you
that we
know?
know,
How do you know?
because I know. And the members of who it is, 2 of them joined together to run as on the board of selectmen.
Which is encouraged. Everyone encourages people to run for a town office.
Listen, I didn't make any accusations that what they're doing is underhanded, illegal, or not by the rule book. I didn't make one accusation on that. What I'm saying is it's ironic to me that a group that is concerned citizens is a very limited group that, while they have some outside a specific geographic area in town, the majority of it is in a specific geographic area, and it was only created when they saw something that was potentially going to go in their backyard, which, by the way, I can tell you, every board has done everything they can to try to circumvent that project going forward, and we all know from the get-go, it's a 40B, and the state will make the ultimate decision on it. Did you know that the town hired a consultant
What?
to give us the best recommendations on how we defeat that? No, you don't know that because the leaders of the concerned citizens don't want to tell you that. So we spent $35,000 on a consultant who was part of that, said every single project in the state that has gone to court with a board of selectmen have made a public opinion of that project. Every single project has passed because the board of selectmen have no jurisdiction. Do you also know that that group was reaching out to Senator Keenan to help them, and Senator Keenan
That's what
didn't give them, Senator Keenan didn't give them the time of day because some of the key members are not on another party. Some members of the Board of Selectmen put them in touch with our rep, Dave DeCoste, who is one of the biggest proponents of 40B. He hates them. They fight them tooth and nail. We put them in contact with Dave when Senator Keenan wouldn't help. So there's a lot of things that have happened that you, while a member of it, may not know what's going on with that board. That's a board that actually the key members attacked and physically intimidated a member of the Board of Selectmen. There's all kinds of things that can.
That's his personality. He's a loud and boisterous person.
Okay, so he went to a meeting to try to talk with them on what the town was doing on their behalf. They didn't want to hear it because he was the other member of the Board of Selectmen who was also accused of taking money from the general contractor, and that he also would be it would be on him for the death of 18,000 people. So listen, I don't know if have you ever been accused of taking money and being the cause of 18,000 people dying when all you did was try to do the right thing?
People can say what they're going to say. It doesn't make it true or false or whatever.
Oh no, it's very true. They told it right to my face. It was in the parking lot of the middle school at
I'm
an
not saying
election
that it
in
wasn't.
front of 40 some odd people. It was very true.
I'm not saying that it wasn't true that someone said that. I'm saying that for them to say that does not make it true. You don't have to get upset because someone said that to you in other words. Because blah, 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 you know how people blah, blah, blah.
So then why do they get upset when we say something that they don't like?
Human nature.
Oh, so it's human nature on them, but I shouldn't get upset when I'm accused of taking bribes and killing people?
No, you
Okay,
shouldn't get upset
I got you.
because people can say whatever they want.
Okay. Well, I just said what I wanted for the last 20 minutes.
Thank you for talking.
Giving you facts on that group, by the way.
Sir, you're
It
not.
wasn't hearsay, it wasn't anything else, it's actual facts.
You're welcome to have that opinion. I do not agree with your opinion, but you're welcome to have that.
That's fine.
It's okay. They're citizens, they're involved, they're voters, so it's cool. That's what we were encouraged to be.
No, but I wish they would actually come and try to get educated instead of being set in their ways and not look at what the betterment of the town. So my core issue with them is and I'm not saying every single member of that, but some of the core leaders, it's in the betterment of them, not the town. And I can tell you right now, if the shingle mill project never came, we wouldn't have heard from 80% of those people. They would be literally doing nothing. The only reason we hear from them is because of shingle mill, and they have their own agenda on that, which is what the agenda of virtually everyone in this town is. No one wants that project. No one does. There are things going on that you in that group have no idea what's going on, to try to make sure that that project does not get done.
That's good.
But but your group does not want to hear the facts. It's unfortunately what it is today, is go on social media and the crap that is spewed out there, well, that must be the facts. It's not the facts. But they don't want to take the time to learn what the facts are and what's going on. That's probably the most discouraging part from my side, is all the time that zoning, in planning, in conservation, in water, in sewer have spent to put the town in the absolute best position. So when this goes to court, because it is going to go to court, that we have at least a shot at winning. Because it's not going to be up to anyone in town, it will be up to the state. And we do have our representative on board with us, fighting all the way. Our senator, not so much, but our representative is part of the group. But no one in that group wants to take the time to listen, because talk about setting their ways, whatever it is, they have this notion that the Board of Selectmen is against them, that the town is against them, and that's not the case.
So in the end, it's going to be cool, everybody will get what they want, because if the 40B doesn't pass, you say nobody wants it, so if it doesn't pass, nobody gets, you don't get it, and that's great. So everyone is
But it doesn't just work that way. So,
It's all right. Maybe we don't need to keep on.
no, it doesn't. So what happens is, so in that, because it's a 40B, so if our boards all voted down, we will lose in court. So the only way for us to have any shot at beating that is to put a multitude of restrictions on that project that make it to the point that it is not financially feasible for the developer to go forward. And then if they choose to go forward, we need to make sure that all the restrictions that we have put on it are legitimate reasons why. Right? For everything that we have.
That's great to hear.
And it's all being done.
That's
But
great.
that group doesn't want to listen that that's what's happening. But at the end of the day, if the developer still feels after all the restrictions that they can make a profit and decide to go forward, it will go to court. It'll be the mass courts that will decide. We don't have any say. The only thing we can do is make sure that we've done all of our due diligence, crossed our T's, dotted our I's, so when it goes to court, that we can present a case where the court ultimately looks at it and say, it is not in the best interest of the town to have that development. But it will ultimately be up to the state. And unfortunately, in 40Bs, a large percentage that go to court end up getting approved at a reduced, at a smaller, but that's what we've tried to do, is set ourselves up. They want to, as a group, say, Board of Selectmen say no, the 5 departments voted down. If we do that, we get crushed in court, and they put whatever they want. We'll get killed in court.
You thought Marshfield and Milton and their court cases with the state, the same thing. They don't have any say.
They have nothing.
Until we get to 10%.
Right.
So everyone is working towards the same end, hopefully that the 4D project didn't go in, and so everyone is really working through the same thing. It's just different approaches. So we're all on the same side.
So we are,
So that's cool.
but trying to get some of those leaders to understand that. And because of that, there have been other things that they do, that group has organized that has stunted the growth, from potential supermarket to potentially 250 people losing flood insurance, to trying to update a charter that's 55 years old and doesn't allow the town to operate efficiently, in why we continue to get project after project thrown at us because buildings haven't been maintained. We don't have clear direction on what. So we have a source system that, because of the structure, has not been taken care of since 1964 when it was built, right? So these are the things that this charter addresses, so we don't have those things. So we don't have this massive bill coming up because we haven't had a plan in place and that we haven't taken care of our infrastructure. That's what this is about.
It's, in a way, it's a good thing that the original project over there was voted down by town meeting, because now there was a place to put in the MBTA zoning that went in that same place. So in the end, it kind of.
It's the same type of development that was proposed though, the multi-use development
It's
district.
the exact same thing.
It's the exact, what they
It's the
originally
exact same
asked
thing.
for, that's the zoning we put in.
It's the
there
exact
to
same
allow
thing.
That type of project.
It's literally the exact same thing. Yet, if it was voted on then, we would have already had tax dollars coming in.
And it would have contributed towards our affordable. income units,
Affordable, which would have impacted shingle.
which would have allowed us a better negotiating position on shingle.
Where was the market that's supposed to go?
So off of Commerce, Same Street, up in that area. No, it wasn't just there. It was a multi-use. So some residential, some light commercial, some retail. There was also, as part of that, would have been a big chunk of money that would have went to the upgrade of our treatment plant.
Well, the proponents should have shown up at town meeting and voted in favor of it. But they didn't, so we can't go back and change the past.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand it. So here, I guess here's the thing, so we can continue, so we'll see what happens at town meeting. Listen, if it ends up getting voted down, we just continue doing what we did. Like I said, for me personally, I just continue living, it's not gonna impact me one way or another. So fortunately, taxes keep going up, not to be. I could use that money for something else, but it's not gonna kill me one way or another. But there's a lot of people in town that those couple $100 here and there make an impact. That's why we're trying to do what we did.
Well, make sure your proponents get out there and vote.
But I'm not here to rah-rah and try to, so again, not to fill a thing to get what I want.
That's how it's done.
It's not how I operate. So no different when I did the schools. I wasn't on a path, whatever. Here's the thing. I go out, try to do what I think is the right thing to do. Try to get the information out. People make their own decisions. I don't want to influence you either way. It's not how I operate, right? But I want to try to give you the facts. At the end of the day, if people go a different route, they go a different route. I may disagree with it. At times I may question it going, what the Christ are you thinking about? But at the end of the day, so, yeah. I mean, could I stuff town meeting with 300 people? Well, me personally, I couldn't. My wife could. My wife could do it in a day. It's not how, but that's not, I want this to stand on the merits. But if we have a group that don't even want to understand the merits, that's an issue. But if that's okay with the town, that they're okay with this group dictating how the town is, that's on the rest of the residents. On the 12,800 that don't show up at town meeting, it's on them. I just wish that group would take as much time to learn what really is happening and what's going on versus whatever their perceived issues are. One of which, her whole thing, she doesn't want the gate open because it will impact her house.
Well, that's another whole thing. We
No,
don't
it's not.
even need to go there.
It'll impact her house. She doesn't want the gate open. She doesn't want it developed.
Just
No.
make point out, like, we met for 2 different sessions over 3 years. No one showed up for the meeting, no one asked questions. How many people are here now trying to learn about it? No one showed up.
She was one of the one that made the list that was with inaccurate information last year.
And this was the first board or committee I served on with this, so I have no agenda. I didn't know anyone within town hall. I have no plan for anything or to put anybody anywhere or any grand scheme or anything. It was presented to me. This is what I do for a living. I'm a financial administrator. I've managed offices. I have business management. This needed to be done.
The town charter you're talking about.
The town charter, yeah. So I know that some people who look at Rich and think, oh, he has an agenda and he just wants it to be his way. That's not at all what this is. And I'm telling you how I came in on this as not knowing anyone in any department. I have nothing to gain from this. I just saw something that was not run efficiently and really needed to be fixed. Like, we keep talking about money and stuff like that, and spending, but the money is being spent inefficiently. And that's the main concern with this money. And then people are like, why do we need a fire station and a new school and to do this and to do that? There's nothing being taken care of. So we're spending all this money now, none of the stuff is taken care of. In 30 years, our kids are all gonna have to dump a ton of money on that. And I just left my house to my son and my will, and I don't want him to have to go through this. So I'm thinking about the town that he's going to live in 20 years now. And be that.
Great point. Sorry for keeping everybody.
Well, thank you for listening to this conversation. I think we've made some progress in understanding each other and made the town meeting vote that reflect the feelings of the town.
So we already know one member of that board has already made contact with our town administrator to tell him that he didn't like 4 words in the charter and that he is going to make sure that this gets voted down. Just so you know, one of the key members of the concerned citizens, his issue is 4 words out of this whole document. And said because of those 4 words, he will make sure that the concerned citizen group votes this down. Just so you know.
Well, that is a citizen's prerogative.
No, it is.
To
I
question
don't disagree.
the wording of what we're voting on,
So, thank you.
one way or the other. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. What's that? Oh, all right. No, I got it. Okay.
What did I do?
No. I've been very well known time.
I thought everyone knew Carl.
I tried to lay low.
I know the name, I didn't know the face.
I didn't either. I knew the name, didn't know the face.
I have a good night.